We joined a common market and now find ourselves part of a European Union. It's increasingly recognized that there will have to be greater central control of taxes and spending, and that looks to demand greater central political union. Our relationship with Europe is a huge issue on which the political class of this country seems adrift from the people. Here with our studio audience are four people with very different visions of our future relationship with Europe. The leader of the UK Independence Party, Nigel Farage; David Davis, who ran against David Cameron for the leadership of the Tory party and was previously a Minister for Europe; Peter Hain, the former Labour Cabinet Minister and Minister for Europe as well, and the former leader of the Liberal Democrats, Lord Paddy Ashdown. Now, David Davis, how important is it that at a time like this we try to redefine our relationship with Europe?
Well, it's going to become very important because the only way out of the problem of the Eurozone will be more federalism, if you like, for some of the European Union members, and more centralisation. We won't want that. That will be something we have never signed up to and won't want to in the future. So we've got to start deciding exactly what we do and don't want.
So this is a pretty big moment.
A very big moment, absolutely.
Paddy Ashdown, you would share that view, I imagine.
Absolutely.
And we'll come to the question referendum shortly and whether people should have a say and what the question might be. But you also believe, therefore, that this country has to decide whether it is in or out long term?
Not now. 3.5 million jobs now depend on trade with Europe, our major partners. Probably reduce the trade annually with a European Union, 40% of our trade, 2% with China, down to family basis at £3,300 for every family in Europe. And I think the important thing is that we make sure that we do the right thing to ensure the European Union survives. I agree with David Davis, that does mean deepening the institutions of Europe.
Peter Hain, if Paddy Ashdown's right, and there may be a mechanism for saving the euro, it's something that we want to see succeed, isn't it?
We want to see the euro succeed, of course.
We want to be part of it if it's successful, don't we?
Because 40% of our trade is with the eurozone countries, and over half our trade is with the European Union as a whole. We've got to remind ourselves why we're in Europe, why I voted yes in 1975, why we went in, because Europe has saved this continent, which we're part of, although an island off it, from war and conflict of a kind which didn't visit any other part of the world on the same scale. There would have been war in Western Europe
without the European Union. Are you seriously saying that?
I'm saying that the European Union helped cement democracy and peace and prosperity after the Second World War. When Paddy was a special representative in Bosnia, or shortly before that, Croatia was at war. And now it's actually establishing democratic procedures because of the European Union. Let's not forget that big prize and the prosperity it's brought to everybody. Now, having said that, the Eurozone is in crisis.
Spain, it's a disaster zone economically, isn't it?
But you
falling
can't
behind
deny
the whole of the rest of the world.
You can't deny it.
Uncompetitive, with job regulations, environmental standards.
You can't deny it's the richest market in the world.
Well, if you think the Eurozone, with total unemployment at 23% and rising fast, is a success, I'd hate to see what failure is.
I'm not saying it's a success. The euro is a different matter.
You just were. You were saying it's brought us prosperity.
I'm saying the European Union has brought the whole of Europe prosperity. The Eurozone was designed on an entirely faulty basis from the beginning. I voted against the Maastricht Treaty. I always thought the euro wouldn't succeed on this basis. That's a separate issue, but it's a critical issue for us. But the idea that we would get out of Europe and not anymore have access to emergency health care, not anymore make the rules that affect our single market.
This is silly, isn't it? Look, I mean, these arguments we're hearing tonight are 40 years out of date.
Okay, let me
the idea that we have to be part of a political union in order to buy and sell goods with French and German and Italian companies, frankly, is an idea that belongs back in the 1960s. Right. We have been through global trade liberalisation through GATT and the World Trade Organization, and you should remember, Paddy, that we are the biggest export market for the European Union in the world. They sell us far more than we sell them. And if you think 3.5 million jobs are dependent on our trade with Europe, there are 6 million jobs in Europe dependent on their trade with us. Mercedes will go on selling cars.
Hang on a sec, just to bring in the audience a little bit here, because I think it's... Yes, go on.
I do wish the politicians read their history books. Prior to 1914, 40% of the English trade was done with Germany. It didn't stop a war. The idea that you will not go to war with people you do trade with is ridiculous.
Who here feels themselves to be a European? Just put your hands up. Why haven't you put your hand up?
I don't feel. I mean, I feel first and foremost that I'm an Englishman, and then Britain second. I don't.
European third, perhaps?
Possibly, but very vaguely. I mean, I think the issue for me is, again, I don't see why we can't trade with these countries, why we have to take part and be part of a growing federal superstate is beyond me.
And you're nodding.
I agree. I totally agree. I believe politically and economically we'll always be tied to other countries, but I just feel the relationship of the Eurozone is just far too close.
If we leave, World Trade Organization would be our only sort of mechanism to trade with Europe.
The European Union has 60 free trade deals with 60 different countries all over the world. Mexico has a free trade deal with the European Union. Are you telling me their biggest export market wouldn't have that deal?
Well, I mean, if you are going to consign us, as you want to, Nigel, to the position of Norway, outside, but nevertheless...
No, Switzerland. No, Switzerland.
Or okay, Switzerland.
And able to trade with the rest of the world, Paddy. Make our own trade deals. We're forbidden from doing that.
Hang on a second. You made the point. Now let me make a couple of points. One is that if you're Norway or Switzerland, Norway's had to enact 75% of European legislation to remain a trader in the single market.
Hasn't.
Yes, they have.
No,
Switzerland have had to enact nearly all the financial regulations out of Europe, but run by Europe. That's what you're proposing.
Completely wrong.
I mean, here, it isn't actually.
And
you can have a look at the
Europe
figures.
as well.
If Europe doesn't realise the right reaction for the new circumstances in which we find ourselves is to deepen the institution of our defence, our foreign affairs and our economy, we are bloody fools, and the next decade is
destroy our
going to be
democracy.
far...
So get rid of our democracy.
No one has suggested
answer,
that. Let me just say this to you. If you do not realise that if you really want to consign all the countries of Europe to the perfect sovereignty of corks floating around behind other people's ocean liners, help yourself. But in the world you're about to come into, getting together with our European partners, preserving our democracy and pooling our sovereignty is the way that we give ourselves a powerful voice in a world that is going to be much more turbulent and much more difficult.
Why shouldn't we leave, David Davis?
I think we should renegotiate our position. I don't think we should need to leave completely.
What powers do you think we should take back?
Let me just take one point first. I mean, Paddy has a point that we want to maintain a trading relationship with Europe. I don't accept the price is the one he puts up. And we always get this. It's either or. Either you're in or you're out. Either you pay the club fee or you don't. We should have a relationship which allows us to trade with them, which has cooperation agreements, but not subordination.
So what should we renegotiate with Europe?
Well, I'm afraid it's the whole package. I think we have
the whole thing.
The whole package has to be.
Why would they agree to that?
We effectively
why would they agree to that?
In effect, they've telegraphed something already. Merkel's already telegraphed something already. They see that they are going to go down a route which does not suit us. They know that, and they're going to have to come to a new relationship. What it'll be is a very difficult.
And if they don't, David, should we leave?
But if we're on our own, we're not going to get a good relationship.
Are you in favour of renegotiating our arrangement with Europe?
So we're either all in it together or all out. There's no halfway house in Brussels anymore.
If we separate trade and politics, the halfway house, if you like, is that we could have a trade relationship without being members of political union, and that overwhelmingly is what the British people want.
Do you feel in your bones this is a democratic institution? Do you feel you have a say over how it behaves?
No, I think...
Does anybody?
No.
And nobody. Does anybody? Is it
absolutely?
This is
even as ministers,
specifically selected audience to represent public opinion.
Here's a central proposition I'd like to put to Nigel. The American state, the United States, has now agreed to begin trade negotiations with the European Union, our two primary trading partners. Nigel wants us not to be at the table at all.
I want us, Paddy, to accept the offer that was made to us by the Commonwealth, which is now nearly a third of the population of the globe, who offered us 7 years ago a free trade deal, and the British government rejected it because we're... What, are you saying Australia and Canada aren't serious?
The European Union's on our doorstep. Half our trade is with
We do most of our business on telephones. I know you've never worked in the real world, but most of our business is done on telephones.
If it becomes in Britain's interest to join the euro in the future, I think we should do so.
How many people would like to see a referendum sometime when we can frame the question in the next few weeks or months? Yeah. And you, sir, in the green shirt, have you nothing interesting to say on the referendum?
I have. We already had a referendum, and I voted in it, and there was 2 million for, 1 million against.
I didn't vote. I'm 48. I didn't vote. There were 32 million of us who were too young to have voted.
So you couldn't be bothered?
Well, I was 11. It would have been rather difficult, wouldn't it, really? You know, I mean, come on. And the question was about a common market, not about a European Union.
Clearly an overwhelming majority of people here who are, as I say, properly selected to represent public opinion, who do want some sort of say on the subject. Is that what the point you're going to make, sir?
The point that I'm going to make is the fact that I too voted for it, but I voted purely and simply for trade. I didn't vote for a political union. I didn't vote for this country to lose its sovereignty. I didn't vote for the amount of money which the European Union is costing us. And quite clearly, I do agree with Nigel Farage's rants that I've watched on YouTube.
Thank you.
Let me just expose a little further. So you're in favour of a referendum?
Absolutely.
Would you be in favour of an in-out referendum?
Well, I think what we've got to do is have the negotiation first. And then, yes, when it comes down to it, in the final analysis, it probably does have to be an in-out referendum once the people have seen what the new deal is. But you've got to have a new deal first.
You know, there is almost nothing that I would like the British people to have that we cannot get better by working with our partners. Not in crime, not in mortgages, not jobs, not anything. And the mechanism for doing that, it seems to me, is the European Union. And if we abandon that and commit ourselves to, as I said, the perfect sovereignty of small nations drifting around in a much more turbulent world, our capacity to have the voice to be able to deliver the security I want for the British people will be massively diminished.
Surely the question on the ballot paper should be, do you want to be ruled by Berlin? At the moment we have the wealthiest nation dictating to the other 27.
The question should be, do you want to pool your sovereignty with others to give you better security?
Surrender's a better word than pool, isn't it? Well, what we're arguing is there is no European demos. And, you know, even the introduction tonight sort of said, is Britain being a bit silly and a bit deluded? Actually, this debate is happening not just in Britain, but in every country in Europe. People are saying, we want a Europe, I want a Europe, of trade, cooperation, but not one run by Herman Van Rompuy, not one that costs us a fortune, not one that makes most of our laws, and not one whose courts overrule ours. So a Europe of cooperation.
Jeremy,
the
so
Labour
at some
Party
point
should
in the
commit
future,
to a referendum in-out.
I think we've got to see where we get to as a result of this current crisis. But
Lord Ashdown said that we've got maybe 2-3 decades of turmoil.
No, I didn't say that. That was.
Are you suggesting that we wait until everything is nice, calm waters, and then decide?
I made it very clear.
Let's find out whether we want to be in or out.
It will. Isn't the great danger that actually what we get is not an in-out referendum? The danger is that the political class will try and play the trick on us they played in '75. They'll say, we've renegotiated, you can have a trade deal with Europe whilst the rest move forward to political union, and they'll ask us to vote yes to staying part of a single market that regulates our industry. And that's my big fear with this, and we've got to push all of us that want a referendum. Let's have a proper in-out referendum.
I hope without any
if you renegotiated a good deal, would you give us an in-out referendum or a referendum on the negotiations? That's the key here.
I've said already that I do not think you can dodge the issue of the referendum.
Okay, fine.
I've said
okay,
that,
good.
so let's see where we get to.
Okay.